What if the man you're trying so hard to impress is actually easier to forget than the one who barely tries? The truth is, women don't obsess over the loudest man, the richest man, or even the most handsome man. They remember the man who makes them feel something they can't explain. Today, I'll show you the 9 signs you've already become that man, and if you stay until the end, you'll discover the one trait that silently separates unforgettable men from everyone else. Most men completely overlook it, and that's exactly why they keep getting replaced. Most men believe that becoming unforgettable is about having the perfect appearance, the perfect career, or the perfect lifestyle. They spend years trying to become more attractive on the outside, assuming that external success automatically creates emotional impact. But human psychology doesn't work that way. People don't carry memories because someone looked good or said all the right things. They carry memories because of how someone made them feel during moments that mattered. That's why 2 men can have similar looks, similar achievements, and similar personalities. Yet one is forgotten within days while the other stays on a woman's mind for months or even years. The difference isn't found in appearance. It's found in emotional experience. Emotional experiences leave deeper impressions than logical facts because the human brain is designed to prioritize feelings over information. Long after conversations fade and details become blurry, emotions remain surprisingly clear. This is why someone can forget what was said, but vividly remember how they felt in another person's presence. If you understand this principle, you stop chasing attention and start creating genuine emotional significance. The men who become unforgettable aren't constantly asking themselves how to impress someone. Instead, they focus on who they are when nobody is watching. Their confidence isn't switched on only during conversations with women. Their calmness isn't a performance created to gain admiration. Their character exists independently of anyone's approval. This creates something incredibly rare in today's world: authenticity. Most people spend their lives adjusting their personalities to match whoever they're speaking to because they fear rejection. They become different versions of themselves depending on the audience. But authenticity has a magnetic effect because it communicates emotional stability. When someone isn't desperately trying to earn validation, their presence feels grounded and secure. That kind of energy stands out because it's becoming increasingly uncommon in a culture where so many people are constantly seeking attention, approval, and reassurance from others. Psychologists have long understood that emotionally significant memories are stored differently from ordinary experiences. The brain naturally gives more importance to situations connected with strong emotions because they may hold value for future decisions. This means that an interaction doesn't need to be dramatic to become memorable, but it does need to feel emotionally real. A man who is completely comfortable with himself creates an atmosphere where conversations feel effortless instead of forced. There is no pressure to entertain, no need to constantly prove intelligence, status, or worth. That emotional comfort itself becomes memorable because many people rarely experience it. In a world full of noise, anxiety, and constant performance, genuine peace is surprisingly attractive. Calmness often leaves a stronger impression than excitement because it provides something people subconsciously crave: emotional safety. Many men mistakenly believe attraction is created by saying clever lines, creating jealousy, or making someone chase them. While those tactics might create temporary curiosity, they rarely create lasting emotional memory. Curiosity eventually fades when it is built on manipulation rather than substance. Emotional impact, however, grows stronger over time when it comes from consistency, confidence, and authenticity. A woman may meet dozens of men who compete for her attention, constantly trying to prove themselves through compliments, expensive gifts, or exaggerated confidence. Yet the man who remains emotionally balanced, who listens more than he speaks, who doesn't rush to impress, often becomes the one she remembers later. Not because he demanded attention, but because his presence felt different from what she had become accustomed to experiencing. There is also a powerful psychological principle known as emotional contrast. People notice differences more than similarities. When everyone reacts emotionally, the calm person becomes noticeable. When everyone seeks approval, the self-assured individual becomes memorable. When everyone is trying to be interesting, the genuinely interested listener stands apart. Emotional contrast quietly separates individuals without requiring loud behavior or dramatic displays. This is why unforgettable men are often misunderstood. From the outside, they may appear ordinary. They may not dominate every conversation or become the center of every room. Yet the emotional experience they create leaves a lasting imprint because it feels rare. They don't overwhelm people with effort. They create space for genuine connection, and that connection becomes difficult to replace. One of the biggest misunderstandings about confidence is that most people think it comes from being admired. They assume a confident man is someone who receives constant compliments, attracts attention wherever he goes, or always has people agreeing with him. But that isn't confidence. That's dependence disguised as confidence. The moment a person's self-worth relies on external approval, it becomes fragile because it is now controlled by other people's opinions. Genuine confidence is built on something far more stable. It comes from knowing who you are even when nobody applauds you. It comes from trusting your own judgment even when others question it. A man who doesn't need constant reassurance carries himself differently because his identity isn't being negotiated every day. He isn't asking the world for permission to feel valuable. He has already decided that for himself. That silent certainty changes the way he speaks, the way he makes decisions, and even the way he responds to rejection. People are naturally drawn toward individuals who appear emotionally self-sufficient because emotional stability feels safe, while insecurity often creates emotional exhaustion. Many men unknowingly place women at the center of their confidence. Their mood depends on whether a message is returned, whether a compliment is received, or whether someone chooses them over another man. They celebrate attention as proof of their worth and treat rejection as evidence that something is wrong with them. This creates an emotional roller coaster that quietly weakens their presence. Every interaction becomes loaded with expectation because they are searching for validation rather than connection. Ironically, this desperate search for approval is often what pushes people away. When someone feels responsible for maintaining another person's confidence, the relationship begins to feel like work instead of enjoyment. Emotional pressure rarely creates attraction, it creates distance. A woman can often sense when a man is trying to gain confidence from her attention rather than simply sharing an experience with her. That difference is difficult to hide because it influences everything from body language to conversation, making interactions feel forced instead of natural. A man who is secure within himself doesn't chase every opportunity to be liked because he understands that being accepted by everyone is neither realistic nor necessary. He knows that disagreement is part of life, rejection is part of growth, and misunderstanding is part of being authentic. Instead of changing his personality every time he encounters someone new, he remains consistent with his values. This doesn't mean he is stubborn or unwilling to grow. It means his identity isn't constantly shifting to satisfy other people's expectations. That consistency creates trust because people know they are dealing with someone genuine rather than someone performing for approval. Authentic confidence is remarkably peaceful. It doesn't need to announce itself, defend itself, or constantly prove itself. It simply exists, and that quiet certainty often speaks louder than exaggerated displays of dominance or charisma. Another reason emotionally secure men become unforgettable is because they don't confuse attention with affection. They understand that attention is easy to gain, but difficult to sustain. Anyone can attract temporary curiosity through appearance, money, social media, or clever conversation. But lasting attraction grows from emotional consistency. A confident man doesn't become intoxicated by praise, nor is he destroyed by criticism. He enjoys appreciation without becoming dependent on it. This emotional balance makes his reactions predictable in the healthiest possible way. He isn't overly excited when things go well, and he doesn't completely fall apart when they don't. That emotional discipline creates a sense of reliability, and reliability is deeply attractive because it signals maturity. In a world where many people are driven by impulse, insecurity, and emotional extremes, someone who remains composed under pressure naturally becomes memorable. Confidence without validation also changes the way a man approaches relationships. Instead of asking, "How can I make her choose me?" he begins asking, "Are we genuinely compatible?" That single shift transforms everything. He stops viewing himself as someone trying to earn a place in another person's life and starts recognizing that every healthy relationship involves mutual choice. He no longer feels the need to impress at every moment because he understands that pretending to be someone else only attracts people who are looking for that false version. His conversations become more relaxed because he isn't constantly measuring whether he is saying the perfect thing. His decisions become clearer because they are guided by principles instead of fear. His presence becomes calmer because he isn't carrying the invisible burden of seeking approval from everyone around him. That quiet independence creates a lasting emotional impression because it reminds people what genuine inner security looks like in a world where so many individuals are still searching for permission to believe in themselves. One of the greatest mistakes men make in relationships is believing they have to perform in order to be appreciated. They think every conversation has to be impressive, every silence has to be filled, every date has to be unforgettable, and every interaction has to prove why they deserve someone's attention. Without realizing it, they turn connection into a performance. They become so focused on saying the perfect words, making the perfect joke, or creating the perfect impression that they stop being emotionally present. And people can feel that difference immediately. When someone is performing, their attention is directed inward. They're constantly evaluating themselves, wondering if they're saying the right thing, questioning how they're being perceived, and trying to control the outcome of every interaction. But when someone is emotionally present, their attention shifts outward. They listen without preparing the next sentence in their mind. They observe without rushing to impress. They respond naturally instead of strategically. That presence creates a completely different emotional experience because it allows the other person to feel seen rather than managed. Human beings remember moments where they felt genuinely understood far more than moments where someone simply tried to entertain them. The irony is that the harder someone tries to appear interesting, the less emotionally available they often become. Performance creates pressure, and pressure prevents authenticity. Instead of allowing conversations to unfold naturally, many men begin treating interactions like interviews they have to pass. Every response becomes calculated. Every opinion is adjusted to avoid disagreement. Every story is exaggerated to sound more impressive. Although these behaviors may temporarily attract attention, they rarely create trust. Trust grows when people sense consistency between who someone claims to be and who they actually are. Emotional presence communicates that consistency because it doesn't require constant effort to maintain. A man who is comfortable with silence doesn't panic when a conversation slows down. A man who is comfortable with himself doesn't feel the need to dominate every discussion. He understands that meaningful connection isn't built through endless talking, but through genuine engagement. Sometimes the strongest impression comes from making another person feel heard rather than making yourself unforgettable. Many people underestimate the power of calm energy because modern culture celebrates constant excitement. Social media encourages people to become louder, faster, funnier, and more dramatic in order to capture attention. But attention and emotional impact are not the same thing. Loud personalities often create temporary excitement, while emotionally grounded individuals create lasting comfort. A woman may enjoy spending time with someone entertaining, but she remembers the man whose presence allowed her to relax without feeling judged or pressured. Emotional presence creates an atmosphere where people don't feel like they have to wear a mask. They don't feel evaluated or compared. They simply feel accepted. That emotional safety becomes incredibly rare because so many interactions today revolve around proving worth, competing for attention, or maintaining appearances. A man who creates peace instead of pressure offers something that cannot be easily replaced because emotional comfort is far more valuable than temporary excitement. Another important aspect of emotional presence is the ability to regulate emotions instead of being controlled by them. This doesn't mean suppressing feelings or pretending nothing affects you. It means responding thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. When disagreements happen, emotionally present men don't immediately become defensive. When misunderstandings occur, they don't rush to attack, withdraw, or manipulate. They create space between emotion and action. That pause demonstrates maturity because it shows they are guided by intention rather than impulse. Emotional regulation also communicates confidence. Someone who remains composed during stressful moments sends a powerful message that external circumstances do not dictate their inner state. This steadiness naturally makes people feel more secure because unpredictability often creates anxiety, while consistency builds trust. Emotional presence is reflected not only in joyful moments, but also in difficult conversations, disappointments, and conflicts where true character becomes impossible to hide. Perhaps the most attractive quality of emotional presence is that it allows relationships to feel effortless instead of exhausting. Many people leave interactions feeling mentally drained because they have spent the entire time trying to impress one another, seeking validation, or protecting carefully constructed images. Genuine presence removes that burden. There is no competition to appear superior, no constant need for reassurance, and no hidden agenda beneath every conversation. A man who is emotionally present gives his full attention because he values the person in front of him more than the image he hopes to create. He doesn't interrupt simply to prove intelligence, and he doesn't listen merely to find an opportunity to speak. He understands that meaningful connection grows from curiosity, patience, and sincerity rather than flawless performance. While others become consumed with trying to be remembered, he focuses on creating an experience that feels real, allowing authenticity, emotional awareness, and quiet confidence to leave the deepest impression on the people fortunate enough to encounter it. One of the most misunderstood aspects of attraction is mystery. Many people immediately associate mystery with playing games, sending mixed signals, or intentionally confusing someone to keep them interested. But real mystery has nothing to do with manipulation. It isn't created by pretending not to care, disappearing for days, or making someone question your intentions. That kind of behavior creates uncertainty, not respect. Genuine mystery comes from having a life that doesn't revolve around proving yourself to anyone. It comes from knowing that not every thought needs to be explained, not every achievement needs to be announced, and not every moment needs to be shared for validation. A man who is comfortable keeping parts of his life private naturally becomes more intriguing because people recognize there is depth beyond what they immediately see. Human beings are naturally curious about what isn't fully revealed. The mind is drawn toward discovery, and when someone reveals themselves gradually instead of all at once, every conversation feels like another layer being uncovered rather than a complete story already told. Many men unintentionally eliminate all mystery by trying to accelerate emotional closeness before genuine trust has been built. They reveal every personal struggle within the first few conversations, constantly explain themselves, or seek reassurance after every interaction. While honesty is essential in healthy relationships, timing is equally important. Emotional intimacy should grow naturally rather than being forced. When someone reveals everything immediately, there is little room for curiosity to develop. Relationships become strongest when they unfold over time because each experience adds another piece to understanding the other person. A man who allows that process to happen naturally demonstrates emotional patience. He doesn't rush to convince someone of his value because he understands that genuine connection cannot be hurried. He trusts that consistency over time speaks louder than endless explanations. That patience creates an atmosphere where interest develops organically instead of feeling pressured. Mystery is also closely connected to purpose. People become fascinated by individuals whose lives clearly have direction beyond relationships. A man who has meaningful goals, responsibilities, passions, and ambitions carries a different kind of energy because his identity isn't dependent on another person's attention. His world continues moving whether someone chooses him or not. That independence isn't about emotional distance. It's about emotional balance. He enjoys companionship without abandoning his own priorities. He invests in relationships without sacrificing the life he has carefully built. This naturally creates respect because it shows he values his time and understands that fulfillment cannot come entirely from another human being. When someone has a purpose that excites them, they become more attractive not because they are trying to impress others, but because genuine passion creates confidence. Their conversations become richer, their perspective becomes broader, and their presence becomes more engaging because they are living rather than waiting to be completed by someone else. Healthy mystery also requires boundaries. Boundaries are often mistaken for emotional walls, but they are actually signs of self-respect. A man with healthy boundaries doesn't feel obligated to explain every decision or justify every personal choice. He knows when to say yes, when to say no, and when to walk away from situations that compromise his values. This predictability in principles, combined with unpredictability in unnecessary details, creates a powerful balance. People know where he stands morally, but they continue discovering new dimensions of his personality over time. That balance keeps relationships alive because familiarity doesn't automatically become monotony. There is always another story, another idea, another perspective waiting to be discovered. The most interesting people are rarely those who constantly seek the spotlight. They are often those who quietly continue growing, learning, and evolving while allowing others to witness that journey naturally instead of broadcasting every step. Another reason mystery creates lasting attraction is because it encourages imagination. The human mind naturally fills gaps in information, often assigning greater value to experiences that require curiosity and exploration. This is why instant gratification rarely creates lasting emotional attachment. When everything is immediately available, appreciation often fades just as quickly. But when someone's character unfolds through shared experiences rather than carefully crafted performances, every interaction gains greater meaning. A man who remains grounded, purposeful, and emotionally secure doesn't feel pressured to constantly remind others of his worth. He understands that genuine value doesn't demand attention. It quietly earns it over time. His confidence isn't measured by how much of himself he reveals, but by how comfortable he is allowing relationships to develop at a natural pace. Instead of chasing fascination through unpredictability or emotional games, he creates lasting intrigue through depth, consistency, quiet confidence, and a life so full of meaning that no relationship ever becomes the center of his entire identity. One of the fastest ways a person loses their value is by convincing themselves that they must accept anything just to avoid being alone. Fear has a strange way of lowering standards without people even noticing. A man who once had clear boundaries begins making excuses for disrespect. He tolerates inconsistent behavior because he hopes things will improve. He ignores red flags because he doesn't want to start over. Slowly, he begins negotiating away pieces of his self-respect in exchange for temporary attention. The problem is that every compromise made against your own values quietly changes how you see yourself. Confidence doesn't disappear overnight. It fades little by little every time you accept treatment that contradicts what you know you deserve. This is why high standards are not about demanding perfection from other people. They are about refusing to abandon your own principles simply because you're afraid of losing someone's interest. A man who protects his standards protects his identity, and people naturally recognize that kind of quiet strength because it cannot be faked. Many people misunderstand high standards as arrogance or unrealistic expectations. They imagine someone who believes they are better than everyone else, constantly criticizing others and refusing to compromise. But genuine standards have nothing to do with ego. They are rooted in clarity. A man with healthy standards knows the type of relationship he wants to build because he has already decided the kind of life he wants to live. He values honesty, emotional maturity, consistency, respect, and accountability, not because they sound impressive, but because he understands that relationships built without those qualities eventually become exhausting. Instead of trying to force compatibility where it doesn't exist, he accepts that not everyone belongs in his life. This mindset allows him to make decisions based on long-term peace rather than short-term emotion. He doesn't chase every opportunity simply because it exists. He evaluates whether the opportunity aligns with his values before investing his time, energy, and emotions. One of the clearest signs of a man with high standards is his ability to say no without feeling guilty. This is surprisingly difficult for many people because they associate rejection with selfishness. They fear disappointing others, so they constantly sacrifice their own needs to keep everyone happy. Over time, this creates resentment because they begin living according to other people's expectations instead of their own priorities. Emotionally healthy men understand that every yes automatically means saying no to something else. Time is limited, energy is limited, attention is limited. Protecting those resources requires intentional decisions. Saying no to disrespect means saying yes to self-respect. Saying no to manipulation means saying yes to emotional peace. Saying no to unhealthy relationships means creating space for healthier ones. Boundaries are not barriers against love. They are filters that protect it. When someone knows their limits and communicates them calmly, they demonstrate emotional maturity rather than emotional distance. High standards also transform the way a man views rejection. Instead of interpreting rejection as proof that he isn't good enough, he sees it as information about compatibility. Not every connection is meant to become a relationship, and forcing one rarely leads to happiness. This perspective removes unnecessary desperation because his self-worth is no longer tied to being chosen by everyone. He understands that mutual respect matters more than mutual attraction, and emotional compatibility matters more than temporary chemistry. As a result, he doesn't chase people who repeatedly show disinterest or inconsistency. He believes actions more than promises. He pays attention to patterns rather than isolated moments. This ability to remain objective protects him from becoming emotionally attached to potential instead of reality. Rather than asking how he can convince someone to value him, he quietly observes whether that value already exists through their behavior. Perhaps the greatest benefit of having high standards is the internal peace that comes from living in alignment with your values. A man who respects himself doesn't constantly question whether he deserves better, because he has already decided that he will not participate in situations that diminish his dignity. His confidence becomes rooted in self-respect rather than external success. He doesn't need to compete with other men because his focus is on becoming a better version of himself instead of winning someone else's approval. His relationships become healthier because they are built on mutual effort rather than one-sided sacrifice. His decisions become clearer because they are guided by principles instead of loneliness. People naturally recognize this kind of emotional discipline because it creates consistency between words and actions, and there are few qualities more attractive than someone whose self-respect remains intact, regardless of who chooses to stay or walk away. If there is one quality that quietly separates unforgettable men from those who are easily replaced, it is emotional discipline. It isn't physical strength, financial success, charm, intelligence, or even confidence on its own. Those qualities can certainly open doors, but they don't determine whether someone leaves a lasting emotional impression. Emotional discipline is what allows every other strength to remain consistent under pressure. It is the ability to remain in control of yourself when life gives you every reason not to be. It means refusing to let temporary emotions dictate permanent decisions. It means choosing thoughtful responses instead of impulsive reactions. Most people believe discipline only applies to habits like waking up early, exercising, or working hard. But emotional discipline is often far more difficult because it requires mastering the one thing most people never learn to control: their own emotional impulses. Anyone can remain calm when everything is going well. The true measure of character appears when expectations are disappointed, when relationships become uncertain, or when rejection challenges the ego. Those moments reveal whether someone has developed inner stability or whether their emotions still control the direction of their life. One of the biggest reasons emotional discipline is so rare is because modern culture encourages immediate emotional expression. People are constantly told to react instantly, post their feelings immediately, answer every message without delay, and seek validation whenever discomfort appears. As a result, many individuals never develop the ability to sit with difficult emotions before acting on them. They confuse urgency with importance. They believe every emotion deserves an immediate response, when in reality, many emotions simply need time to settle. A disciplined man understands that feelings are temporary visitors, not permanent leaders. Anger eventually fades. Disappointment becomes easier to understand. Jealousy loses its intensity. Fear becomes manageable. Instead of allowing these emotions to dictate his behavior, he creates space between what he feels and what he chooses to do. That pause may seem small, but it changes everything. It prevents unnecessary arguments, protects meaningful relationships, and preserves self-respect in situations where impulsive reactions would only create regret. Emotional discipline also changes the way a man experiences rejection. Many people see rejection as a personal attack on their worth. Their confidence collapses because they have attached their identity to another person's decision. An emotionally disciplined man sees rejection differently. He allows himself to feel disappointment without allowing it to define him. He doesn't chase explanations that may never come. He doesn't beg for another opportunity simply because his ego has been bruised. He accepts that not every connection is meant to continue, and he refuses to sacrifice his dignity in an attempt to change someone's mind. This perspective doesn't come from emotional coldness. It comes from emotional maturity. He understands that every person has the right to choose what is best for their own life, just as he does. Instead of wasting energy trying to control someone else's decisions, he focuses on mastering his own responses. That mindset protects him from becoming bitter, resentful, or consumed by the need for external validation. Another powerful aspect of emotional discipline is the ability to remain consistent regardless of changing circumstances. Many people behave according to their mood. They are kind when happy, patient when comfortable, respectful when appreciated, and supportive when life is easy. But consistency disappears the moment stress enters the picture. A disciplined man builds his behavior around values rather than emotions. He chooses integrity even when nobody is watching. He remains respectful during disagreements instead of using conflict as an excuse for cruelty. He keeps his promises because commitment matters more than convenience. He doesn't allow success to inflate his ego, and he doesn't allow failure to destroy his confidence. This steadiness creates trust because people know what to expect from him. His emotional state may change like anyone else's, but his principles remain constant. In relationships, friendships, and every area of life, that reliability becomes one of his greatest strengths because consistency always outlasts intensity. Ultimately, emotional discipline leads to something that many people spend their entire lives searching for but rarely achieve: inner peace. A man who has mastered himself no longer feels compelled to prove his worth to everyone around him. He doesn't measure his value by compliments, attention, social status, or temporary success because his confidence comes from knowing he can trust himself in any situation. He understands that life will always include uncertainty, disappointment, criticism, and unexpected change. But he also knows that none of those experiences have the power to define him unless he allows them to. That realization creates a quiet strength that cannot be manufactured through appearance or performance. It is reflected in the way he carries himself, the way he speaks, the way he handles conflict, and the way he walks away from situations that no longer align with his values. While others remain trapped in cycles of emotional reaction, endlessly searching for approval, certainty, or control over circumstances they cannot change, he continues moving forward with patience, clarity, resilience, and a level of self-mastery that makes his presence almost impossible to forget.